January 20th, 2025, dawned bright and cold in Washington, D.C. The city, still bearing the scars of the January 6th Capitol attack 4 years prior, braced itself for the unprecedented, the second inauguration of Donald J. Trump. Departing from tradition, the ceremony was held indoors at the Capitol Rotunda, a concession to the frigid temperatures. The atmosphere was electric, a potent mix of anticipation, anxiety, and for some, outright fear. Trump, his face etched with a familiar defiance, took the oath of office. His hand notably did not rest on a Bible this time. Instead, he spoke of a golden age for America, a liberation day from the shackles of the previous administration. His words, delivered with characteristic bluntness, echoed through the hallowed hall, a stark reminder of the political earthquake that had just transpired. The inauguration, however, was not without its controversies. The guest list itself spoke volumes, a who's who of Trump loyalists and firebrands. Conspicuously absent were many familiar faces from the Republican establishment, a testament to the deep divisions that still plagued the party. The inauguration marked not a moment of unity, but rather a stark delineation. America, under Trump, was a nation cleaved in two. The day was more than just a ceremonial changing of the guard, it was a clarion call. Trump, in his address, promised a revolution of common sense, a return to a bygone era of American dominance. He railed against government overreach, cancel culture, and the perceived erosion of traditional values. His words resonated deeply with his base, igniting a wave of cheers and applause. For them, Trump's second coming was a validation, a sign that their America was not lost, but merely waiting to be reclaimed. The ink was barely dry on the oath of office when President Trump, true to his word, unleashed a torrent of executive orders, each one a shot across the bow of the political establishment. The sheer volume and scope of these orders were breathtaking, signaling a radical shift in policy and a clear intent to dismantle the legacy of the Biden administration. Among the most consequential was the declaration of a national emergency at the southern border. Trump, invoking familiar rhetoric, painted a picture of a nation overrun by illegal immigrants, a threat to national security and American sovereignty. The order paved the way for the immediate deployment of additional troops and resources to the border, a move met with both praise from his supporters and condemnation from human rights groups. Further cementing his stance on immigration, Trump reinstated the controversial Remain in Mexico policy, forcing asylum seekers to wait in dangerous conditions south of the border while their cases were processed. He also set his sights on birthright citizenship, vowing to end the automatic granting of citizenship to children born on U.S. soil to undocumented immigrants. These measures, widely seen as draconian and inhumane by his critics, were lauded by his base as long overdue correctives to a broken immigration system. Domestically, Trump's executive orders targeted what he perceived as liberal excesses within the federal government. He rescinded diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, labeling them as divisive and un-American. Gender-related executive orders were also on the chopping block, with Trump declaring his administration's recognition of only two sexes. These actions sent shockwaves through the LGBTQ+ community and progressive circles, stoking fears of a rollback of hard-won rights. The southern border, a perennial flashpoint in American politics, was thrust back into the spotlight with renewed vigor under the second Trump administration. Trump's declaration of a national emergency was only the opening salvo in a multi-pronged assault on illegal immigration, an issue that had become central to his political identity. The Remain in Mexico policy, resurrected from the ashes of his first term, was perhaps the most contentious aspect of this new immigration crackdown. Under this policy, asylum seekers, many fleeing violence and persecution in their home countries, would be forced to remain in often squalid and dangerous conditions in Mexico, while their cases wound their way through the backlogged U.S. immigration courts. Human rights groups decried the policy as inhumane and a violation of international law, but the administration remained undeterred, arguing that it was necessary to deter frivolous asylum claims and protect national security. The assault on birthright citizenship, a cornerstone of American identity since the ratification of the 14th Amendment, represented a more profound and potentially destabilizing shift in policy. Trump's vow to end this constitutional right, while light on specifics and fraught with legal challenges, sent shockwaves through immigrant communities and ignited a firestorm of debate about the very meaning of American citizenship. Critics warned that such a move would create a permanent underclass of undocumented immigrants and undermine the very fabric of American society. The implications of these policies went far beyond the immediate impact on immigrant communities. They represented a fundamental reorientation of America's relationship with the world, a retreat from its historical role as a beacon of hope for the world's downtrodden and a champion of human rights. The world watched with bated breath, uncertain of what this new, more inward-looking America would mean for the future of global order. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine, a smoldering ember threatening to ignite a wider European conflagration, presented the newly inaugurated President Trump with one of his most immediate and daunting foreign policy challenges. The war, now in its third year, had already claimed countless lives, displaced millions, and left the region teetering on the brink of humanitarian catastrophe. Trump, true to his penchant for unorthodox and often contradictory pronouncements, had sent mixed signals about his intentions in Eastern Europe. While he had previously expressed admiration for Vladimir Putin and questioned the wisdom of NATO expansion, he had also condemned the Russian invasion and vowed to support Ukraine's right to self-defense. This ambiguity, coupled with his unpredictable nature, left both allies and adversaries alike guessing about the future course of American foreign policy. In the lead-up to his inauguration, Trump had hinted at a desire to broker a swift end to the conflict, suggesting that he possessed a unique ability to negotiate with Putin where others had failed. He had even floated the possibility of a face-to-face meeting with the Russian leader, a prospect that sent chills down the spines of many Western diplomats. Whether such a meeting would materialize, and what if anything it could achieve, remained to be seen. The stakes, however, were undeniably high. The war in Ukraine was not merely a regional conflict, it was a proxy war between great powers, a testing ground for the future of the international order. Trump's handling of this crisis, his willingness to stand up to Russian aggression or his eagerness to strike a grand bargain with Putin, would have profound implications for the future of Europe, the transatlantic alliance, and indeed, the world. As the world focused on the unfolding drama in Washington, D.C., a fragile ceasefire had descended upon the Gaza Strip, bringing a temporary halt to the latest round of violence between Israel and Hamas. The conflict, a recurring tragedy that had claimed the lives of countless innocent civilians on both sides, had once again erupted with terrifying fury, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair. Trump, in a rare moment of diplomatic intervention in the waning days of his first term, had claimed credit for brokering the ceasefire. He had dispatched a team of negotiators to the region, led by his son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner, in a last-ditch effort to stem the bloodshed. While the details of the agreement remained shrouded in secrecy, it was widely believed to involve a cessation of hostilities in exchange for a loosening of the Israeli blockade on Gaza. Despite the fanfare surrounding the ceasefire announcement, skepticism abounded about its long-term viability. The underlying issues that had fueled the conflict for decades, the Israeli occupation, the Palestinian right of return, the status of Jerusalem, remained unresolved. The ceasefire, it was feared, was merely a band-aid on a gaping wound, a temporary respite before the cycle of violence inevitably resumed. Trump, for his part, had expressed doubts about the ceasefire's longevity. He had characterized Hamas as a terrorist organization and questioned their commitment to peace. His administration, while pledging to continue providing humanitarian aid to Gaza, had ruled out any direct engagement with Hamas, insisting that any future negotiations must include the Palestinian Authority. The situation in Gaza, a microcosm of the broader Israeli-Palestinian conflict, remained a powder keg, a constant reminder of the volatile and intractable nature of the Middle East. The world watched with a mixture of hope and trepidation, praying for a lasting peace while bracing for the possibility of renewed violence. The news of Donald Trump's return to the White House was met with a mixture of shock, disbelief, and apprehension across the globe. For many world leaders, the memory of his chaotic and unpredictable first term, marked by trade wars, diplomatic spats, and a disdain for international norms, was still fresh in their minds. The prospect of another 4 years of America First policies, they feared, boded ill for the future of global stability. Formal congratulations poured in from allied nations, albeit often tinged with a note of caution. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, a kindred spirit in many ways, hailed Trump's victory as a triumph for democracy, while stressing the importance of the special relationship between their two countries. French President Emmanuel Macron, who had clashed with Trump in the past, struck a more conciliatory tone, emphasizing the need for dialogue and cooperation in addressing shared challenges. Other world leaders were less charitable in their assessments. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, a staunch defender of multilateralism and a frequent target of Trump's ire, expressed deep concern about the direction of American foreign policy under his leadership. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, while offering his congratulations, warned of potential retaliation if Trump followed through on threats to impose tariffs on Canadian goods. Nowhere was the anxiety more palpable than in Brussels, the heart of the European Union. The EU, already grappling with internal divisions and the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, viewed Trump's return with a sense of foreboding. His disdain for the EU, his threats to withdraw from NATO, and his cozy relationship with Putin had left deep scars on the transatlantic alliance. The prospect of another 4 years of Trump, they feared, could sound the death knell for the rules-based international order that had underpinned decades of relative peace and prosperity. As the sun set on his presidency, Joe Biden, his face etched with a mix of weariness and resignation, retreated from the political stage, leaving behind a legacy forever intertwined with the tumultuous events of the Trump era. His presidency, bookended by 2 Trump terms, would be remembered as a time of both healing and division, a period of relative calm punctuated by moments of national crisis. In his final hours in office, Biden issued a flurry of pardons and commutations, a presidential prerogative often exercised in the waning days of an administration. Among those granted clemency were several high-profile figures, including General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who had faced criticism for his handling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's leading infectious disease expert, who had become a lightning rod for controversy during the COVID-19 pandemic. Perhaps the most controversial of Biden's pardons were those granted to members of the January 6th Committee, the bipartisan congressional panel that had investigated the attack on the Capitol. The committee's work, which had culminated in criminal referrals for Trump and several of his allies, had been praised by some as a vital step towards accountability, but condemned by others as a politically motivated witch hunt. By pardoning those involved, Biden effectively shut the door on any further legal action, a move that drew both praise from those eager to move on from the events of January 6th and condemnation from those who believed that justice had not been served. Biden's legacy, like that of all presidents, would be debated for years to come. His supporters would point to his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, his efforts to restore America's standing in the world, and his commitment to bipartisanship as evidence of his leadership. His detractors, however, would argue that he was too willing to compromise, too beholden to the progressive wing of his party, and ultimately unable to heal the deep divisions that plagued American society. Even as the world grappled with the implications of a second Trump presidency, a sideshow erupted on the sidelines of the inauguration ceremony, casting a long shadow over the day's events and igniting a firestorm of controversy. Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur and CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, a prominent Trump supporter and a fixture in his inner circle, found himself at the center of the maelstrom. During the inaugural parade, Musk, seated in a prominent position among the dignitaries, was caught on camera making a gesture that many interpreted as a Nazi salute. The image, captured by a photographer for the Associated Press, quickly went viral on social media, sparking outrage and condemnation from across the political spectrum. Musk, for his part, vehemently denied any malicious intent, claiming that he had simply been waving to the crowd. The incident, regardless of Musk's intent, cast a pall over the inauguration and served as a stark reminder of the deep divisions that continued to plague American society. It also underscored the perils of celebrity in the age of social media, where even the most innocuous actions could be misconstrued and amplified to devastating effect. The controversy surrounding Musk's gesture threatened to overshadow the more substantive issues at hand, further polarizing an already divided nation. It also raised uncomfortable questions about the role of wealth and influence in American politics, particularly in the context of a Trump presidency that had already been marred by allegations of corruption and cronyism. As the curtain fell on the inauguration ceremony, a sense of uncertainty hung heavy in the air. Donald Trump, a man who had defied political gravity time and again, was back in the Oval Office, more powerful, more determined, and perhaps more emboldened than ever before. The world watched with a mixture of fascination and trepidation, bracing for the unpredictable and steeling itself for the possibility of further disruption on the global stage. The challenges facing the second Trump administration were legion, a world still grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic, a global economy teetering on the brink of recession, the escalating climate crisis, and a resurgence of authoritarianism around the world. How Trump, with his penchant for unilateral action, his disdain for multilateral institutions, and his transactional view of foreign policy, would navigate these challenges remained to be seen. One thing, however, was certain: the world was entering uncharted territory. The old rules no longer applied, and the future, once a source of hope and optimism, now seemed fraught with peril. The next 4 years promised to be a time of great upheaval, a period of profound transformation that would reshape the global landscape for generations to come. Whether this transformation would be for better or for worse, only time would tell.